It's a Thursday evening in February, and I'm sitting in my truck in the driveway of my own house, engine off, hands on the wheel, going nowhere. Not because anything's wrong, just because going inside means sitting on the couch again, and I have spent a lot of time on that couch lately. My name is Garrett. I'm 24. I work at a lumber yard outside Clarksville, Tennessee, and I have approximately 47 things I've been meaning to start since last spring. The online certification. The side business I mentioned at Thanksgiving that my uncle still brings up at every family dinner like he's keeping a tab. He is keeping a tab. The thing about being a guy who talks a lot about what he's about to do is that everyone around you eventually starts doing the math. And when the math doesn't add up, nobody says anything out loud. They just start nodding at you differently when you speak. My dad noticed the nodding before I did. He called me one Sunday, the kind of call where the small talk ends too fast, and mentioned his old friend Howard Pruitt, who used to run a machine shop 2 towns over. Retired now, sat on his porch most mornings. Dad said Howard had a way of cutting through things, and that I should drive out and talk to him. I told my dad I would. That was in October. I went in January. Howard's place was off a county road outside of Ashland City. Small house, big porch, wood pile stacked higher than the railing. He was sitting in a wooden chair when I pulled up, and he had a hunting knife in one hand and a flat gray stone in the other. He was running the blade across that stone in long, slow strokes. The sound it made, that low, dry whisper of steel on grit, was about the most deliberate sound I'd ever heard a man make. He didn't look up when I walked onto the porch, just said, "Hand me that rag." I handed him the rag. He wiped the blade, tested the edge with his thumb, set it across his knee. "Your daddy says you can't get yourself started," he said. I sat down in the other chair. "Something like that." Howard held up the stone. It was worn smooth in the middle from years of use, a shallow groove right down the center. "You know what this is?" "Whetstone," I said. "I works at a lumber yard." I wasn't completely useless. "Every morning," he said, "I come out here and I sharpen one blade, whatever needs it most. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Then I go about my day." He set the stone on the armrest between us. "I want you to take that home. Pick the one thing you keep putting off. Do it first, every morning, before you touch your phone, before you pour your coffee, before you do anything else. Then come back in 30 days. I looked at the stone. I looked at Howard. I thought, this man is going to hand me a rock, and that's supposed to fix my life. I took the stone home. Morning 1. I sat down at my kitchen table at 6:45 with my laptop and finished a skills assessment I'd been avoiding for 2 months. Took me 40 minutes. I picked up the whetstone afterward, held it in my palm for a second, set it back on the table. Something about having it there felt like a witness, like proof that the morning had happened the way I intended it to. Day 6. My buddy Derek texted at 6 a.m. about a last-minute fishing trip down to the Cumberland. I went. I told myself I'd double up the next morning. I didn't double up. Day 11. I tried to convince myself that responding to a few work emails counted as the most important task. I sat there with my hand on the stone for a solid minute before I put it back down, opened the certification module I'd paid for in September, and did an actual lesson. Then I picked up the stone. The difference between those 2 moments, hand on the stone after the emails versus hand on the stone after the real work, was not subtle. By day 20, I had 15 real mornings behind me. 15 days where I did the hard thing before I did anything easier. The stone sat in the same spot on my kitchen table every single day, and some mornings it felt like a question. And some mornings it felt like an answer. I drove back out to Howard's place on a Saturday. The woodpile looked smaller. He was in the same chair, different knife. I handed him the stone. He turned it over in his palm, rubbed his thumb along the center groove where years of use had worn it down, and handed it back. 15 good mornings, I told him. 15 empty ones. He nodded once. Blade that never gets sharpened. You know what happens to it? Goes dull, I said. Goes dull, he said. Doesn't matter how good the steel was when it was new. Doesn't matter what it cost. Sit in a drawer long enough, and it won't cut through soft butter. He leaned forward in his chair. Now, a blade that gets worked on a little bit every single morning? That blade stays sharp enough to do the job when the job shows up. Not because the steel is special, because somebody showed up for it, day after day, and didn't let it go dull. He sat back. You had 15 mornings where you showed up. Before you came to me, how many did you have? I didn't answer. That's the number you should be thinking about, he said. I drove home with the stone on the passenger seat. Somewhere around mile 8 on the county road, what Howard said finished settling. And I pulled over for about 30 seconds because I needed a moment with it. I had spent 2 years waiting to feel ready, waiting for motivation to show up like it was a person who'd eventually knock on my door. But motivation doesn't knock. It doesn't show up first. You show up first, and then it follows, slowly, reluctantly, like a dog that takes a while to trust you. The stone is still on my kitchen table. It hasn't moved in 8 months. The certification is done. The side work started picking up in May, mostly referrals from guys at the yard who needed freelance drafting work. I'm not where I want to be. But I know what my mornings look like now, and that's something I didn't have before. Howard told me something the last time I saw him, while he was working a buck knife across that same gray stone in those same long, slow strokes. He said the whole secret to a sharp blade is consistency, not pressure, not speed, not talent. Just showing up with the stone every morning and doing the work before you do anything else. Your blade is dull right now. You already know which task you've been avoiding, the one that's been sitting in the back of your mind every evening when you lie down and stare at the ceiling. That's the one. That's your first morning. Not next week. Not when things slow down. Tomorrow. Before your phone, before your coffee, before you give the day a chance to make the choice for you. One morning, sharpened on purpose. Then another. That's the whole thing. Not because it's a big, dramatic act of willpower, but because a blade worked on every day never has to be rescued from the drawer. And you've spent long enough in the drawer. If this story lit something up in you, even just a quiet flicker, share it with someone whose light has gone a little dim. Subscribe to this channel and come back in a couple of days. There are more stories where this one came from.